So the first round of the Gaelic Football Championship is over, and 7 teams. We're going to see the back of them for the championship season. That's them one and done. We'll sort of come to them in a little while, but just to sort of briefly look at the teams that did get victories this weekend. Donegal, they saw off down 225 to 112. Offaly beat Louth after extra time. Wexford saw off neighbours Wicklow. Then Longford, they beat Carlow. Mayo hammered Sligo, of course. Kerry did the same to Clare, and Limerick had a very, very heavy win indeed over Waterford by 4-18 to 12 points. So just to run through some of the talking points in brief from the weekend, one of the big ones was the decision by Declan Bonner and Stephen Rochford, his assistant, to play Michael Murphy in that game. And he came off during the first half. Now, he was doing okay. You could obviously see him wince when he tried to collect the ball around the middle of the field. But there was 11 points to 6 at that stage. Was this a game that Donegal were ever going to lose? You can understand that after missing a few games that they'd want to get minutes into Michael Murphy. But a guy of that experience, I would imagine that the main thing is keeping him right and having him available when you need him, get more training minutes into him if you need. There's some players that are replaceable, that there could be 5 other lads in the squad that are of a similar-ish type level. That's not the case with Murphy. Whether it's his free-taking leadership around the field, which you keep hearing time and time again, then obviously that's something that you don't want to miss. But that was a huge risk, and one that really could backfire. Down they left that game behind them in the sense of, what they showed midway through the second half when they started to press up, be a bit more aggressive and run at Donegal. Why didn't they do that from the start? And it's kind of like from the get-go. They were just chasing this game. To be honest, it was a little bit embarrassing at times for them. But just back to Donegal, and Cara O'Kane of the Irish News, he tweeted saying, "Hasty bit of research, but I make it that no team in the history of Ulster had ever scored 27 times in a game before. Only the second time since the mid-1950s that the 30-point barrier has been breached." So he's going to do a bit more analysis and reaction in that, and putting up a scoreline like that, 225, that really is serious scoring in Gaelic football, and that's something we're seeing a little bit more now. I tweeted over the weekend that Gaelic football scorelines, they're starting to look like what hurling scorelines are, and hurling scorelines are obviously going through the roof another bit more again. But scoreline's definitely going through the roof, and I wonder if that can continue. But just to talk about Down, I did feel that they self-destructed throughout that game because of the quality of some of their players. Like Barry O'Hagan, absolutely unbelievable in the forward line, and Owen Bongaller had his fill of it trying to keep into him, 4th and play and another 4th and place balls. But they had lots of players back, but there was no pressure on the ball. So Donegal, despite the fact that there was huge numbers around, they were able to stand up and hit over shots at times. I mean, the kick-out turnover on the 34th minute, Quayle Mooney, who scored a brilliant goal himself, he seemed to fall a little bit asleep. The ball was taken off him. Game was killed off at that point. It was 113 to 7 points. 6-point deficit becomes a 9-point deficit, and that's kind of the end of it. As I said, Barry O'Hagan was brilliant, but I was just looking up as I was watching the game, I was keeping track of all the different ways that Down were self-destructing. So there's obviously that first goal, as I mentioned, the red card, which was absolutely, I couldn't get over it. It was just a ridiculous red card as well. Just McGovern putting his arm out and just taking Michael Langan out of it. Like, he was probably looking for contact and then stretched out for it. Don't know, I wouldn't say it was premeditated, but it was obviously silly and it was needless. So obviously the red card, the kick-out strategy, I think people in Down are a little bit frustrated, wondering what exactly Paddy Talley was expecting from that game in terms of the kick-out strategy. There was no pressure on the Donegal shooters, as I said, 15 wides, taking off Liam Kerr midway through the second half. That's something that puzzled me because he had the pace and power to drive through. But just 5 of 18 attempts scored in that second half. One thing that will upset Declan Bonner, I'd imagine, other than the injury to Michael Murphy, is that they had just one goal chance in the first half, and that came to Jamie Brennan, who obviously buried it away. But his team actually conceded a huge amount of them in the second half. I counted up 5 different goal-scoring chances that the Mourne County had, and obviously buried away only one of them. And another thing that really, I'd go so far as to say kind of annoyed me when I was watching Down, was when they were moving forward with the ball, and this is a screenshot I took in the 53rd minute. They're 9 points behind here. They have the ball. They're moving backwards. And if you're that ball carrier on the left wing there around the 45, who can you even name in it? there's nobody inside the D, there's nobody inside the 21. The furthest player in is probably 30, 35 yards out from goal, and no matter what direction he moves, he's going to be meeting a Donegal man. So I found that very frustrating, and I'd love to know what exactly was the plan for down. Yes, they were possibly going to be outgunned in that game at all stages, but it was just annoying to watch, because when they did raise a bit of a gallop at the start of the second half, they got the score from Mooney, they got a bit of ball into Barry O'Hagan, and they were making a couple of moves, and even just when they went for it, they created goal chances. James Guinness, he had one. A couple of other players had goal chances as well. So it just feels like they left an opportunity to have a cut behind them. It was like timidly going out in a way, and I'd love to get some comments from any down viewers we have in there. Mayo, very, very comprehensive win over Sligo. It felt like a game that was, Sligo had to withdraw last year, but I'd say half-time of this game, they were thinking, we might as well withdraw from this one too, because I'm not really trying to be insulting, but it was 3-13 to 8 points at half-time, and it was very, very frustrating to watch, and I'm sure it was frustrating for all the Sligo supporters out there, and even Mayo fans, I'm sure they'll never get sick of beating their near neighbours, but at the same time, this was just an annihilation. And it's like 10 of the team that started the All-Ireland final against Dublin last December were there for Mayo. Rob Henley, he was in for retired David Clark, Enda Hession, Michael Plunkett, Darren McHale, Jordan Flynn, they're all in the team. But obviously there's a bit of a transition with Mayo at the moment. I mean, there's always transition with all GAA teams. But, as I said, Clark has gone, Tom Parsons, Keith Higgins, Chris Barrett, James O'Shea, Donny Vaughan, and Diarmuid O'Connor, of course, is out as well. But the performance of Aidan O'Shea scoring 2-2, 70th championship appearance, he was obviously really, really good. Just able to bully the Sligo team. And I was down in, I'm trying to remember which venue it was, but it was several years ago now when they got their 5th Connacht title in a row, and he absolutely destroyed Sligo that day before as well. So it's not exactly new ground for him. But the thing about Mayo is, I wonder now, is it going to get to a stage where they can, despite the loss of Cillian O'Connor, can they actually eventually take that step and catch up with Dublin? Because at what stage do the retirements begin to hurt Dublin? Cian O'Sullivan may not have been in the team so much in the last year or two and often been used just from the bench. But if he's not there, if Paddy Andrews isn't there, again, guys that weren't necessarily in the team, Stephen Cluxton, is he going to come back? Kieran Kilkenny hinted that he's part of a training panel to come back. Maybe we'll see. That hasn't been confirmed. Kieran Whelan, of course, said he doesn't expect to see him in the team against Wexford. At what stage, Jack McCaffrey, we still haven't seen him, presumably won't see him this year. At what stage do some of these retirements, and even the guys in the year or two beforehand, at what stage does that actually begin to count against them? Not having Michael Darragh-Macaulay in the training matches, battering you as you'd imagine he does. At some stage, does this begin to tell on the team? And a couple of the backs, they're also hitting the 30 mark. Can they stay this good forever? And like, while the transitioning is happening on all teams, like I said, is it happening a little bit more in Mayo? Are they ahead in terms of their transition? Maybe, maybe not, because then, of course, Dublin have Kieran Kilkenny and Conor O'Callaghan and Brian Fenton all at the height of their powers and will be for another 3 or 4 years at the very, very minimum, and some of them for even longer. Niall Scully's come through. Brian Howard's not going to get any worse. But another player as well, of course, Paul Mannion, that I've named. But at some stage that has to take away a little bit, because the depth of their panel isn't going to be the same, and people say there's still good subs coming on. But even those training matches, when you're 15v15, not having that experience and the older heads and all that kind of stuff, you just wonder, will it kind of begin to tell at some stage? Obviously not during the Leinster Football Championship, but given how good Kerry looked at the weekend going forward, and the fact that they were able to come back the way they did in that league match in Thurles, you just start to wonder, at what stage is this glorious Dublin run going to end? And Pillar Caffrey was on the Gaelic Football Show with myself and Declan Bogue a few weeks ago. He is very, very convinced that it is going to end, that they might get another 1 or 2 maybe, or maybe there'll be a break and they'll come back and win one again. But yeah, you just start to wonder when that's going to happen. Maybe Mayo won't be the team to break through. Maybe it could be a Donegal, a Tyrone. But get your comments in and let me know what you think. Wexford, so they won their first championship match since 2014 against Wicklow. Martin O'Connor, he was the hero. A late goal sets up that quarter-final next weekend against Dublin. Now, it is brilliant for Wexford because going that long without a championship win, and this is a team that, back in 2011 especially, they would have felt that they could have won a Leinster Championship, got to an All-Ireland semi-final in 2008. That was later on in the season where they'd been hammered by Dublin in the provincial final by 23 points, if I remember correctly, Alan Brogan going to town. But Wexford are going to get absolutely tanked. There's very little doubt about that in my mind. It would take a strange one to put up a good argument for it being otherwise. And a few people have gotten comments in asking, just talking about how it was important for Wicklow to get this victory, just for themselves. And I think so too. I agree with that, but it doesn't change the fact that it is going to be an absolute drubbing the next week in the Leinster quarter-final. A lot of teams are already gone from the championship. Obviously, as I said, I expect Wexford to be one of those by this time next week. But is it a bit of an insult to players that there isn't even a back door? I mean, how long extra would the championship have gone on just to get them in there? Obviously, outdoor sports and all that should have been back an awful lot sooner anyway. But we'll leave that debate at the door, along with the ridiculously low crowds that we have at the moment. But one and out for the likes of Carlow, Louth, Waterford, Wicklow, Down, Clare, Sligo. Shane Renan was talking on behalf of Waterford after their game over Limerick, and he was a late appointment. What has he had? Just a couple of months in total between taking up the training collectively with his players, and now he's saying goodbye for the year. How many opportunities would he have had to work on that game plan that they would have wanted to bring in against Limerick, who were in year 5 under Billy Lee? So obviously they know far more what they're about, and the players understand exactly what system is what. I mean, sure, Shane Renan would come in and not necessarily know too many of the players. He kind of said as much in his post-match interview, and who would expect him to? If you're brought in from a different county, and Waterford, how many of their club football matches are going to be on telly, or are they necessarily going to be the talk of the town across the country if something happens with their club teams? Probably not. So his familiarity with the players that he's just taken over would be pretty limited. So that's very difficult for him. And Mickey Hart, who's taken over Louth this year after exiting Tyrone at the end of 2020, he was part of the Louth team that they could easily have won that game against Offaly in the Leinster Championship. Had a late chance through, I think it was Sam Mulroy, and it just about went wide. But Hart said afterwards, you hate losing championship matches, in particular losing championship matches that are a done deal, obviously referring to it being win or go home. You'd love to have the qualifiers, or you'd love to have the Tailteann Cup here for players to go now and say, you've put a huge effort into what you've done so far, there's something else to go for. I think it doesn't do justice to the teams that are trying to make themselves better and climb the ladder a little bit. And this is definitely a point I've touched on before, and again, get your comments in. There are teams out there that collectively play together for, let's say, we'll look at the likes of Dublin and Kerry, for example. They might start training late December and go all the way until late August. So they're together for the guts of 8 or 9 months. Other teams, they finished their championship 3 months earlier. And obviously that's leaving the COVID situation out of it, where some teams will be together for 2 months, others will be together for 4 or 5 months. But there's often like a 2 or 3 month difference per year in how long these teams are together. So over the course of 4 years, one team has had a year extra being together, whether that's doing collective training physically, whether it's tactical team spirit, whatever it might be. So that obviously is going to make it very, very difficult for the teams down at the bottom end of the tier. If they did have something like a Tailteann Cup to target this year, I think that would be brilliant, especially now that most of the provincial championships are a bit of a done deal. I mean, for certain counties, within Connacht, I think Mayo, Roscommon and Galway can all feel like they can win that on a given year, but the other counties, it just doesn't feel a possibility. Obviously, Tipperary won Munster last year, but that's the first time in about 70 years. So is that going to happen again anytime soon after going down to Division 4? It doesn't feel that way. Cork may put it up to Kerry, but Kerry had won 6 or 7 in a row before that. Limited amount of teams, most of the teams in there, they're not going to win it. I mean, let's look at Leinster. Dublin are going to win it, and that's just the way it's going to be. And then obviously Ulster is relatively competitive, but for the most part, teams around the country, at least half of the teams in the country go into every season knowing there isn't a hope that they're going to win a provincial championship. So it is kind of verging on the ridiculous at this stage that we don't have any competition for them. Yeah, fine, if you want to do the whole idea of keep the provincial championships, I mean, my preference would be play the provincial championships instead of the provincial or the pre-season competitions, have them in January or February, play it off in the space of a month. After that, get into championship. I wouldn't even go with a league anymore. I'd absorb the league into the championship and sort of work out whatever group system you want. Lots of games for every team, and then have that then move on into a championship and keep the provincials at the start. And it's up to teams to take it as seriously as they want to. But either way, you have to give players a chance to succeed in some way, shape or form. Tiered system works at club level. Why not at intercounty level as well? I saw Nicky Brennan, former GAA president, reduce to tears watching his club, Connie Shamrocks, win an All-Ireland Junior Club Championship at the start of 2020. So I don't see why that wouldn't work at intercounty level as well. It's humiliating for certain counties watching how badly they're beaten, and there's no real place to go after you get that humiliating beating. So certainly you'd feel sorry for some of the players, and I think competition structures have to be adjusted, and hopefully they will soon. So that's the football brief for this week. Let me know your thoughts. Get them into the comment section.